Hey, here is Roberto Varese at the GFCC. Thanks for joining. We are continuing the series of conversations on infrastructure and competitiveness in preparation of the GFCC annual meeting that is really around the corner. So I'm really happy to have here today with me Minister Tae-Shin Kwon from Korea. Minister Kwon currently is the President and CEO of the Korea Economic Research Institute, and Minister Kwon is being joined by Professor Park, and they will be really engaging in this conversation about infrastructure and competitiveness. Minister Kwon, Professor Park, thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
That's great. Korea really is a great example in terms of infrastructure development and investment. Even today, considering Korea's development level, your country is the one that probably has the highest ratio of investment around over GDP in the globe. How do you do that? Which are the tools and where's the money coming from?
The first thing, the miracle of Korea's fast economic development comes from first good government policy guided by, a very clean and then future vision leader, President Park Chung-hee. And second, it's coming from our education level. People, so much indulged in their children's education. That's second. Fourth. Third, good infrastructure. We built Seoul-Busan Highway in 1970, and then the other industrial complex and POSCO. So infrastructure is the necessity for fast economic development. And we have done a lot of infrastructure, the construction, which was the necessity for fast economic development. But when I was in the budget office in 1990s, we were in short of government budget because there are so many things to build: port, the road, and then airport, but government revenue limited. So we thought about inviting private investment, giving them incentives to do that. And then we can release government the shortage of fund. That's the first requirement. And second, usually private investors are more efficient, and then more more modern technology. So we can build take advantage of shortage of fund. And then we can take advantage of efficient management of private sector. So we have started public-private partnership in 1994. So that was one of the reasons how we can achieve fast economic development by having a good infrastructure.
And what is the situation today in terms of investment and PPPs in Korea?
Ever since Korea introduced the PPP system in 1994, there was some fluctuations in terms of investment in the PPP project. Even though the PPP system was introduced in 1994, there was not too many people who understand what the PPP is. The government officials has a limited exposure on these innovative schemes of infrastructure financing. And also in the private sector, the financial institutions didn't have a full knowledge about what the project financing is. So even after the PPP system was introduced, the market was very slow. It was after the financial crisis in 1997 and 8 that the government decided to promote the market very actively. In the wake of financial crisis, the government had to cut down the budget on the capital investment. So the government need the private investment to fill the infrastructure gap. So the government revised the PPP Act in 1999 to promote the market, to induce the private investment in the infrastructure. Two major measures were taken. at that period. One was the government decided to take the substantial risk of the project by guaranteeing a certain level of revenues. And the other measure was to allow the private investors to initiate the proposals. I mean, usually the infrastructure proposal is developed by the public sector, but to encourage the private sector to develop the project, the government accepted the proposals initiated by the government. Thanks to that kind of market promotion measures, the Korean PPP market was very active in the early 1990s. But after 2005, so I mean, in terms of investment size, the private investment took almost 20% of the total infrastructure investment in Korea. So it reached, yeah.
But yeah, sorry for interrupting, Professor Park. Before going into that, just let me pose one question related to one of the topics that you highlighted, capacity building. You said that everybody was really learning in the private sector, in the government side, how to engineer, let's say, how to go into project finance models. So how has Korea addressed the, let's say, that issue, building capacity? You mentioned, let's say, the legal framework, really important. You mentioned that the logic was reversed in terms of allowing the private sector to propose projects. But how have you addressed capacity building?
Yeah, good question. At the early stage of the PPP system, there was a lack of capacity, both in the public and the private sectors. So at this period, there are two major players who initiate the market. One is the government officials who strongly encourage the construction contractors to get involved in the project. Actually, the construction contractors are interested in any kind of investment because project financing itself is to get the profit out of the long-term investment, but the construction contractors still can get the construction profit during the out of the construction works itself. And in Korea, the public sector financial institution, which is the Korea Development Bank, played a very important role at the early stage of the PPP systems. They were an important player to get into the project financing at the earliest for the earliest project. So they are a part of the public sector. So they were willing to accept a kind of a relatively high risk of the project, while the private financial institutions were not ready to get into the businesses. So they develop a kind of a pilot project, and we get some experience from the project implementations.
And there is always trial and error, because many places it has been the first time to go into that path, that procedure. So there was no textbook. So we should learn it by ourselves by making a lot of errors. So it is sometimes kind of learning by doing. And one of the good incentives to do PPP is, as I told you, the government can overcome shortage of the budget or funding, and then we can mobilize the private initiative of the entrepreneurship and technology. But to fill the gap of the risk, private investors hesitate. I mean, don't like. We gave kind of a minimum revenue guarantee, but nobody knows about what is the adequate level of minimum revenue guarantee. So we have done some mistakes, and then it also depends upon, because it is related with tax money, a lot of politics involved. So nothing can be perfect and nothing can be done in a day. It is kind of learning by doing. So we need to talk it, and when we need to learn each other by learning best practices of other countries' success story.
Yeah, that's really great, Minister Kwon. Let's say this whole thing about learning. And which are the lessons that you would highlight from that whole experience if you had to list three key things?
Well, one of the most important lessons we can share with other countries is it's important to keep the balance between the market promotion and the fiscal disciplines. As Minister Kwon explained, the PPP, even though the substantial share of the cost is financed by the private investments, it is ultimately a part of the fiscal management of the government. And it has a substantial impact on the fiscal management system, and it is ultimately paid by the taxpayers. So in the area of the PPP, the concept of value for money is very important. The PPP can be justified only it can improve the value of the taxpayers' money. But as I explained, the Korean government, right after the financial crisis, was very active to promote the market. Too much emphasis was put on the market promotion. So after the trial and errors, we figured out that it's important to keep the balance between the promotion of the market and improve the value of the taxpayers.
Exactly. If you let me tell my own experience, I was director of the social infrastructure project in the budget office, Korean Ministry of Finance. So when we first built or construct Incheon Airport, we need to build the transportation system. So now we have a highway, which is 100% done by public-private partnership, or rather 100% built by a consortium of private constructors. But they need some kind of guarantee of profit. So they ask us not to build the fast train connecting airport to downtown because it will reduce their revenue. So we have delayed the construction of fast train, but when we make a PPP to build a fast train connecting Incheon Airport to downtown, we gave kind of a minimum requirement revenue guarantee. So there is no incentive for the runners of the train to promote, to make it efficient, because it is covered by minimum revenue guarantee. So every year, huge deficit accumulated. So finally, the Korean rail voted back. So this is kind of the thing I told you already, learning by doing.
Perfect. Any other learnings that you would like to share?
Well,
and the most difficult thing, nobody knows about the future. What would be the stream flow of future income?
That's
what would
about
be the
risk
cost?
management.
Yeah, what is the cost of the future? What would be the interest rate in the future? So nobody sure about 10, 20, 30 years later. The flow of revenue, the cost, and then the cost and revenue can be measured by interest rate, market interest rate those days. But we don't know future interest rate. So it is a very difficult job.
Okay. Professor Park, I interrupted you when you were talking about the percentage of the participation of the private sector in PPPs in Korea historically in today. So what's the case today?
Actually, the PPP market these days is very slow because after 2005, the government figured out that the government was too active, too generous to the private sector. The public-private partnership, the literally implies something positive some games, but in reality, sometimes the partnership is zero-sum situations. If I take more risks, then I'll lose the money. The public or private should take the appropriate level of risk, but the government figured out that we took too much risk of the project. So after 2005, the government decided to strengthen the fiscal disciplines in the management of the PPP project. So the market responded to the strength in the fiscal disciplines, and the number of projects and the size of the investment keep declining. And after the financial crisis in 2008, the market lost almost its momentum. So these days, the market is very slow. After it reached at the top in 2008 in terms of the investment size, but recently, the Ministry of Strategy and Finance tried to very hard to promote the PPP market. There are several reasons. One is the PPP is the infrastructure itself is very important to develop the economic growth. And the other reason is given the fiscal constraint due to the increasing demand for the social welfares. There is the government have a limited resources to invest and maintain the infrastructure. So they have to fill the gap by inviting the private investment on the infrastructure. So in April this year, the government announced several measures to promote the PPP. So one is another scheme of taking more risk of the project by the public sector. I mean, even though the minimum revenue guarantee scheme was abolished in 2009, the government decided to take more risks by guaranteeing just the construction cost of the project at a certain levels. That is one of the key measures to promote this.
And in addition to that, one of the fundamental issues we should consider when we talk about PPP is the political stability, because every 5 years we change government, and then usually opposition government come into power, try to blame the achievement of former government. So sometimes they try to change the contract which was made between former government and then private investors. So they try to change it. So there is some kind of risk from the viewpoint of private investors. So because the term itself is very long term, 10, 20, 30 years. What if government change its position? So what is the guarantee we can assume, even if the party changed, the ruling party, the ruling government changed, how we can expect the contract can be implemented? Those things should be discussed.
Perfect. A final question that is slightly different from the conversation that we had on PPPs. It's more about technology and how to use investments in infrastructure to drive technology development. For instance, some of the cases, not just the year for the GFCC best practices report, but in previous years, we had cases from Korea related to clean energies, sustainable technologies, and this year we have something on smart urban transportation systems that are investments in infrastructure, but that are also connected to technology development. What's your take on that? And during your tenure, Minister Kwon, at the Presidential Council of National Competitiveness, there were important initiatives towards, let's say, green growth and other areas that really connect infrastructure, sustainability, and technology. How is Korea doing that today?
Yes, I think by the enhancing and then upgrading our minimum requirement to keep our air clean, that is climate change issues, then to meet those minimum requirements, companies and then the businesses should do to make new technology to meet the requirement and to develop new technologies to meet the requirement and then to make the project profitable. So, and the other thing, government usually is the worse than private businessmen to run some infrastructure. So we have invented or introduced new systems like build, transfer, operate, or build, transfer, lease. So not only construction of infrastructure, but also management should be done by private businesses, which is more efficient. So in many ways, by PPP, we can enhance our technology to meet new requirements of climate change issues, green growth, and also management issues. We can rely upon the better management skill of private sector.
Minister Kwon, Professor Park, thank you so much. We'll continue this conversation in the King Abdullah Economic City during the GFCC meeting. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Roberto.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Okay, bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.